Hey there guys, I am SonicGhost and welcome to another bonus episode of Let's Play Shantae. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at an early prototype here for the Game Boy Color game. This demo was kind of lost to history for a very long time, but recently, this demo was found on a DVD backup used by Interplay Entertainment and was able to be salvaged and presented to us as it is in today's standards. If you want to read up about this demo, there is a really good article over on GamingAlexandria.com where you can learn more about what's different in this prototype compared to the final release. But in today's video, we're going to take a look at this said prototype and see what is different for ourselves. Now, one thing we're going to notice here is that Shantae has a really good OST, has some really memorable music, but if we take a close listen here in this demo, you got nothing. This demo has no audio whatsoever. No music, no sound effects, nothing. So for this video's purpose, I will be putting in music from the original Shantae so that things just don't really sound too boring, so to say. We want to spice things up a little bit here, so let's go ahead and jump into things. So, pressing the start button here, we will be presented with a screen that looks very similar to the debug menu screen on the final product here. We have a multitude of different options we can pick here. We have intro, Laby 1, TS1, and title. So all four of these options will take us to different areas in the game. So let's go ahead and select the first thing here, the intro. Now jumping to the intro sequence here, we can see things are playing out the same in this prototype as they do in the final product, but once our house is shot, we will see our first major difference here in the set prototype. There is no story whatsoever in this intro cutscene, so that means this intro sequence will have no story going forward. Once we leave our house, we can also see down the HUD, things are slightly different here. We're starting with 2 lives here in this prototype compared to 4 in the final product, and we have all 10 hearts available to us compared to the final product where you only start with 3 out of the 10 hearts. We can also see our dance meter is slightly different as well. While we still have the same 4-star along with the note design, the note along with the first star is yellow, which is something only happens when you're using the dancing moves in Shantae. Pressing the select button, we can go ahead and dance, and we can see the meter does act a little bit differently here. The note glows every 2 stars, so the timing here is a little bit different compared to the final product, making dancing a little bit harder in my opinion here in this prototype. So we can still put in the same commands as we can in the final product, so pressing down and then right, we can transform into the monkey transformation here no problem, as the monkey is the one transformation that is available in this demo. If we try any of the other forms, say the elephant form or pressing down and left, that does not work. Pressing down and then up just does not work at all. No up dances will work in this set prototype. So none of the warping dances along with the Tinkerbat transformation, they will not work here. Pressing any of the attack ones, say hitting down and then A for the spider, does not work. Same for down and B, you cannot transform into the harpy. It is just the monkey in this set demo. But let's go ahead and leave Shantae's house. And making our way across this bridge, we will see our next notable difference here, as the cannonballs, while they function the same here in the set prototype compared to the final product, they have no drop shadow here. So it's a little bit harder now to see where these cannonballs are going to collide with the set bridge before they make their way down onto the screen. So you really got to be paying attention here, but for the most part, everything else plays the same here on this bridge sequence. Once you get to the end, the bridge will collapse, and you will be making your way over the Scuttle Town. Once you're past the bridge, you'll see the pirate ship here in the background has docked over to Scuttletown. It'll shoot out its last projectile full of Tinkerbats and Risky Boots to invade into the town. And at this point, this is where Risky would talk to Shantae here a bit, taunting her on the way. But since there's no dialogue here in the demo, yeah, she just kind of laughs and leaves. See you later, Risky. I'm going to go ahead and follow you over to Scuttletown, but by doing so, we're taken right back to the title screen. There is no burning down sequence here in this said demo, so as soon as you catch up with Risky, that is where the intro portion ends. So let's go ahead and make our way to our second option here. Let's try out Laby 1. Laby 1 stands for Labyrinth 1, actually. So, selecting this, we're at the entry point to our first labyrinth of the game, Dribble Fountain, and it just opens straight up for us compared to in the final game, where we need to get to the assistance of Bolo, and he will open up the entry point to Dribble Fountain. But here, we can just enter straight in. Hold it, you rat! What? Oh, it's you. You're a silly little girl if you think you can stop me from wrecking this demo. Ta-ta. So even in the demo, they have some fourth wall breaking, as that is different dialogue compared to the final product, but it's more of a cheek and tone difference since they're referencing that this is an actual demo compared to the final game. But here in our first labyrinth of the game, Dribble Fountain, we're going to see there's a lot of notable difference here in this said labyrinth compared to the final product. And first things first, we can already see one major difference here. The enemies. This here is a different designed crab compared to the final product. In this prototype, they have 3 eyes compared to the final release where they only have 2. They look a little more cartoony in the final product compared to this version where a little more of a monster in comparison. But they're the same kind of crabs as we've seen in the final product, but they do have a different dying animation, so there's also that. I want to be careful here of the squid enemies. The room is a little bit bigger here, just heading into this portion of the labyrinth. We don't have any top platform up above, so we don't have a warp squid. And since we don't have spider transformation, we can't even explore up to the top of the said area, even if we wanted to. So let's go ahead now and continue making our way over into our next section here. And let's jump down, as this is what we need to do normally when playing through Dribble Fountain. Here we got ourselves a wet gal, and this is pretty much the same exact enemy from the final product, as we need to whip her with our hair 5 times in order to destroy the said enemy. But when we do deal the final point of damage, notice the dying animation is different. The wet gal explodes and then melts down, which is very different compared to the final product, where she'll just burst into a pool of water. So very different to see the dying animation here in the prototype. It was a lot more violent in comparison to the final product. Here's a wet man, so just like in the final product, these guys are kind of a pain to attack, but all my pike balls here unfortunately, so I have to just attack these guys with just Shantae's hair. We can't even pause the game in this said demo, so even if we did have items, we couldn't check. Wetman also destroy themselves in the same graphical sense as the wet gals and just explode in a fiery burning passion, but besides the point, here's where we get our first warp squid, and this is a completely different thing as we open up this container, and it's just a scroll. This scroll looks very similar to the Firefly Shrine scroll that we see in Watertown, so this could have been a different collectible earlier on in development, or that could have just been a placeholder thing. Hard to exactly say, as this demo, this was released even before the Capcom partnership, so this was pretty early on in the development stages of Shantae, so we don't know exactly what they would have had done for the said dungeons at this point past Dribble Fountain, as there's really no record of it, just in this demo or anywhere else on the internet. This room here is a little bit different compared to the final product. This same room in the final product would have water as your bottomless pit area, but the idea here is basically the same outside of that. So we just ride these platforms up, we can get to the top of the room, being very careful here not to fall. As we fall down to one of the set pits, we will die and lose a life. Or at least that's what you would do in the normal game. Here in the prototype, while we may have lives, they are limitless lives, so we don't have to worry about game overing here. So we can die as many times as we want, and there's not going to be a penalty for it. Here we want to put the pattern of fish, fish, fish to get a key. The key looks a little bit different here. It's rapidly flashing a multitude of different colors, and it's a little bit smaller compared to the final product, but the idea is the same. Collect the key. Now we can use this said key to unlock doors. Here we got our little hidden passageway that's in the final product here in the same room of Dribble Fountain. A little bit hard to notice in this version though that there is a hidden passage here, but the same idea applies. We could just crawl into the tiny little crawl space here and just make your way through the said area. Let's go ahead and break open this pot. As we can see, when we're in a crawl space, we can't use our hair to whip, so we can only do that out in the open, which is a thing they changed for the final product as well. We don't have to worry about that in the final product, as we can just whip things whenever, no matter if we're crouching down or not, no matter if we're in a cave. As long as we can just use the attack button, we can whip our hair. Simple as that. Here's also more money from item drops here. And we can see the enemies here are a little bit different looking. They're kind of the same idea though in concept, but outside of that, yeah, it's very similar so far here, but I want to go ahead now and transform into the monkey. So let's go ahead and do our little monkey dance here, as yet again, we have access to the monkey transformation at any point here in this demo. The monkey can climb pretty fast in this demo, way faster than what he can in the final product, and he really attaches the walls here too. So the monkey controls vastly different here in comparison to the retail copy of Shantae. No warp squid up here, so nothing we really do in this section. Here, this room looks a little bit different compared to final product. There's wet gals in here, not the case in the final version. But outside of that, everything else here pretty much checks out. It does feel very bland though without music. It just does not have the same personality. The Labyrinth theme in Shantae is one of my favorite songs in the whole game, so to just not even have that here, it does feel a little more lifeless in comparison. Here we got a pattern of fish, fish, snail, so let's go ahead and remember that. But here we can see this room is gigantic. Very different looking compared to the final product, as this room in the final product is a quarter of this size. You don't need the room this big. This is just overkill in my opinion. But we have the same idea here. One of these little stone puzzles, we need to go ahead and flip around the patterns here on the wall to match the patterns in the previous room. The last one here, want to go ahead and make it into a snail shell. With that, the key will drop down to the very bottom, so let's go ahead and follow it. And we'll see here the key is bouncing a lot more here compared to the final product, so that's one change I'm glad they did fix up, because the keys are very bouncy here. I collected a key so fast I didn't even realize I collected it. This is how fast we can get those said keys. Grab ourselves a 1-up over here, same idea as in the final product, but the room down here is way bigger in comparison. Here we got to climb back up to, well, get back to where we came from before, but we want to head this direction, because this will take us into another section of Labyrinth we need to go, which would lead us to our first transformation dance, the monkey transformation. Even though we already have it, we do want to see if there's anything different on this side of the set dungeon, so we'll go ahead and explore it. So here, this room's different as there's no warp squid here, there's just a 1-up, there's no pit, so you can't die in this room, which is a nice addition, but outside of that, things are pretty much the same. So you may be wondering why I'm not using the monkey transformation to go through small crevices, as that's what I like to do in the retail product all the time. Well, this is because Monkey does not move all that fast in this version. She's a very slow transformation in the said prototype. You really only want to use the monkey here in the prototype to climb walls, as even holding down the attack button, the monkey does not move any faster whatsoever. It's a very slow transformation here in the said prototype. So, unfortunately, the monkey may be a good thing to use in the final product to get through small crevices faster, but here in the prototype, it's faster to actually crawl. In this room, it's the same idea as the final product. We want to knock over one of the said stones to break it, which will unlock a door. But here, there's a crawl space. That was not the case in the final product of Dribble Fountain. There's no crawl space in the said area. Platforming structure here is basically the same. Some little differences here and there. Mainly with the area being a little more narrow, but that's about it. Here we got a wet man, so we want to go ahead and destroy this guy, because just like in the final product, this guy will drop a key. So just corner him into the wall, keep on whipping him, and eventually he will explode in a fiery death, dropping a key. So let's go ahead and use this said key in our previous room here. Unlock the said door. And here we'll just go ahead and transform into the monkey. Climbing up here, we got ourselves a pot which would just have some money, so let's see if that's correct. And indeed it is. It's a big gem, so that's correct. Pattern here is fish, snail, fish. We want to remember that, as our next section will need that said pattern. Go ahead, transform into the monkey once again. Up here is where a warp squid would be, but not in this version of the game. There are no warp squids whatsoever here in this said demo, so any area that had a warp squid is just going to have a different item now of some kind. But let's go ahead and solve the puzzle of this room so we can get the key to make it into the next room. But you're going to notice another big difference here. Outside of seeing the background being very different for Dribble Fountain in the prototype, it's a lot more pattern-based in comparison to the final product. This section to get this stone platform down to the bottom floor, it's a lot bigger in comparison to the final product. They shortened this up in comparison to the prototype version, and I'm really glad they did. Just because in hindsight, this was a little overkill. This section did not need to be this long at all. It's way too much in my opinion. but we just gotta keep on knocking this platform around, and as you can also notice, every time I get up, sometimes Shantae will whip her hair again, and that's just because of a weird quirk of how her hair whipping works here in the set prototype. As soon as you whip your hair from a crouching animation and then jump back up, she will whip her hair again, so that's a little bit of a weird quirk. Not exactly sure why that is the case, but there are a lot of weird oddities when it comes to some of the control here in this version that got more fixed up for the final product. So that definitely does help in the long scheme of things, but for the most part, this game does look and play very similarly to its final release. Doesn't seem like they really need to do all that much in between different stages of development here, mainly fine-tune things and finish up others. Heading into this room here, this is where we would have our Guardian of the Labyrinth teach us our transformation dance, but we already have the set transformation here in the prototype, so there's nothing in the room for us to do. We do have a stone statue trying to shoot us with a fireball, and it just doesn't work, so there is that. A little weird. Let's go ahead and get out of here. So, at this point, we have the transformation, or at least we would have the transformation if that was the thing you just get normally, but we have it unlocked, so let's go ahead and play things out like now we just got the said dance and continue moving on the said dungeon. At this point, we're ready to go ahead and make our way to the boss's chambers, so let's go ahead and use the monkey and zoom up this wall. The monkey climbs so fast up the wall in this version, it is insane. They toned it down, definitely, in comparison to the final release. As while the monkey is fast climbing walls, this version is like a speeding bullet up. You could just mash the jump button, and the monkey just goes flying up the wall. It's a huge difference compared to the final release. So you know what, let's go ahead and do the same thing in this long vertical shaft. Transform into the monkey, just mash the button and just go straight up, why don't ya? But take a pit stop here, because there's another room over on our left which does not exist in the final product. Heading over here, we got ourselves just a long list of pots here. We can go ahead and destroy these said pots in our way. But that's really it, as this section here has nothing else. This room is empty. We can go ahead and transform into the monkey and climb up to the sides here, and we can see this is just a giant box. There's nothing else in the room. It's empty. Maybe there was another thing planned for the said room later on. Maybe this could have had another puzzle for you to solve for a key, but as of now, at this point in development, they had no plans for the room, and I guess they never really figured out what to do with that said space, as that room is removed for the final product. That room does not exist at all in the final release here for Dribble Fountain. Another thing that's different here, as we can see, is that there's a room on our left here instead of on our right, as we would go to the right side and continue moving forward, but not here. That has been changed up, so let's go ahead and move over to the left. And here we got another wet now we can go ahead and fight, so let's just go ahead and take care of this enemy real quick before we continue forward. I do like the stone pattern here on the backdrop. It does look very nice, and again, the backdrop here is different in comparison to the final release, as they still kept the blue tone, but there are some things different between the prototype and the final release in terms of design. Here we can see another pattern on the wall here, which is extreme. It's a 5 pattern point. So it's snail, fish, 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 snail. We do want to remember that. Go ahead, transform back into our human form and head over to the right. As in here, this is where we can use that said pattern, which looks like it's basically all set up for us at this point. Actually, no, it's not. It actually, you know what? I need to go back because the pattern's so long, I cannot remember it. They don't make a pattern this long in the final product. So I had the right idea, I just flip-flopped it. I'm glad they don't do this kind of thing in the final product, because this is a little overkill. You don't need this much. This is just too much of a puzzle. So let's go ahead and flip these. There's your fish. I'm just going to go over and try to line myself up for this last hit. Which, yeah, that's about right. Same problem as in the final product. You can easily hit one of these a little too much and then flip the whole puzzle around. Go ahead and grab our key, and with that, we are done. We can fall into the pit here, trying to lose a life, but as mentioned earlier, there are no lives here in the said demo. You may have a life count, but it's basically unlimited lives, so it might as well not even exist. Transform into the monkey here, and we can climb up these sides of the walls, but there's really no point for the structure. It's just a random set of blocks, as there's nothing up here. Don't know why they'd exist. I really don't understand that, but that's besides the point. Make our way over here to the left, and we got a couple of wet men to fight. I'm just gonna let these guys come to me, and I'm gonna just try to corner them into the said wall, because that's the best way to fight this enemy in my opinion, if you don't have things like pike balls to use. I'll just corner you into the wall, just constantly whip, and hope to get the weak point. And with that, that's one destroyed. Now let's take care of the second guy. These guys flicker a lot in this version too. They don't really do this nearly as much in the final product, but it might just be because of the nature of the room. There's a room similar in Dribble Fountain where you fight 2 wet men, and a similar thing happens there. But there's a little bit of slowdown there, so you don't notice the flickering as much. But now with that, a door's unlocked, so we can make our way out of here to our left. And here, we can just drop down this hole to make our way back to the entry point of Dribble Fountain. This is a shortcut to get back to the beginning, as where we need to use that set key we got is over here to another room that didn't exist in the retail version. This room here up and to our right. So coming into here, we can transform back into our normal form, make our way around with some platforms, unlock the final door, and now we're ready to head into the boss of Dribble Fountain. So, heading our way over here, we can notice there's nothing. So, yeah, at this point, we reached the end of Dribble Fountain. There is no boss fight here in this said dungeon, so at this point, once you make it to this said room, you're technically done with the dungeon. This is where the demo ends. Overall, there's a lot of differences here in Dribble Fountain with this prototype compared to the final release, and they really did cut down a lot of things, as this is a pretty big dungeon for your first labyrinth of the game. In some ways, it could be seen as a little too confusing for the first dungeon, so toning things down and making things a little more beginner-friendly in comparison to what we have here was probably for the best, as something like this works better as the second or maybe third labyrinth in the game compared to the first, just when it comes to raw size. Back here on the file select screen, let's go ahead and pick the third option here, TS1. Loading into this option, we are thrown into Scarecrow Field, and right away, we can already see a pretty big difference here. There's a sign in the beginning portion of Scarecrow Field that we cannot interact with whatsoever. So it looks like originally in development, they were planning to have signs here in the overworld that would have told you where you're at and possibly where you're going, but this is not the case in the final product, as you won't find signs like this at all in any area of the game. There is code, however, in the final product that does hint to what these signs would have said. So here, since we are in Scarecrow Field, this sign would have read, "Welcome to Scarecrow Field." To the west is desert. To the east is Spiderweb Forest. So, at one point they were planning on having signs all throughout the overworld of Shantae telling you where you're at and where you're going next. And honestly, that would have helped in terms of helping you keep track of where you're going, which, in a game like this, when you don't have a map, having some kind of point of direction does help in some kind, but it do kind of replaces functionality with the NPCs in the game, kind of telling you exactly where to go next and what direction each town's in. So in some fashion, they found a pretty good supplement to these said signs. But now let's go ahead and make our way through the said area, as since this is Scarecrow Forest, an overall portion of the game, we can run through this area and see that pretty much everything is the same here compared to the final product, except the enemies here. That's really the only difference, as we only have the Scarecrow enemies appear here in Scarecrow Forest. There are no other enemy types here in this said area. Another thing you'll notice as you're running through the said area of the game is that it will never turn into night. At this point in development, it does not look like they had the day-night cycle implemented just yet, so you can't get any fireflies at this point. There's no heart holder in the area, as that item wasn't existing yet. But the day-night cycle difference is a pretty big one, since the nighttime would make the enemies in this game a lot more tough. They would take a lot longer to kill, having double the amount of health, so having no night system in some ways makes combat a little bit easier. If we head here to the right, we are thrown into the Dribble Fountain entrance, and just like the Labyrinth 1 file, we can make our way into Dribble Fountain right away as it opens up, making our way through our first labyrinth. Since we already explored the first labyrinth, I vote not to go into that area. And to the right, we are thrown into the Scuttletown entrance here. This here is the Scuttletown gates. We hold up in front of the doorway, nothing happens here. We can't go in the Scuttletown. So at this point in development, the town section here was not developed yet, just the main gate entry here. So if we leave the area and go to the right, we loop right back around to Scarecrow Field. So in this file, you can only make your way around Scarecrow Field, the Dribble Fountain entrance, and the Scuttletown gates. no other area here in the said overworld was put in this said prototype. If you head left, you'll go back to the Scuttletown gates. Going left again will take you back to the Dribble Fountain entrance, and then going left one more time will take you back to the Scarecrow Field. So these 3 areas loop around to each other, and that's pretty much it for this file. There's not much else that you can do here. Back on the file select, we only have one more option we haven't taken a look at here, which is the title option. But as the name implies, if you select the said option, you just go back to the title screen. Yeah, that's a pretty impactful option, don't you say? But yeah, kind of expected to have in a demo like this, as you want a quick and easy way to get back to the demo screen so you can show the next person who is ready to play the said demo the full picture of your said game, which will even include its title card. So it made sense to have as an option, but for our sake, that's where this demo ends. There is no more content we can take a look at here in the said prototype. But overall, there's a lot of notable changes here in this said version of the game compared to the final product, mainly when it comes to Dribble Fountain, as the entire area, for the most part, is the same between the prototype and the final release. A lot of the rooms definitely got redesigned in between the time period of this prototype being available to the final product's release time. And in a way, it is probably for the better just because of how much more complicated Dribble Fountain is here in comparison to the final product. And being that Dribble Fountain is the first dungeon of the game, you don't want things to be too difficult for the player when they're still learning the basics of Shantae. So I do feel like this prototype does a good job at showcasing what this game was supposed to be, along with all of its new kind of gameplay styles that it was bringing to the table. But at the same time, with all the differences we've seen here compared to the final product, you can definitely see that this was an early version of the said game that still needed some time to be developed, which makes sense as this was months before the final product was even released, and even before Capcom was involved as the said publisher. But now with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at this said demo. It was a very interesting piece of history for the Shantae series, and I'm glad has now resurfaced, and this time giving life once again. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.